Welcome to the Toon podcast. We've had a couple of days to take our breath and relax after the season that was, the fantastic season. Thoughts generally have already started turning towards the transfer window and next season, but there's going to be none of that tonight. We're going to do a bit of a season awards. So we're going to have a little review of the season, but by going through some of the categories of goals and games and things like that, and have a bit of discussion around that and see if we can pick the season apart a bit. It's been very difficult to pick answers for some of these categories because it's been such a good season, but we'll give it a go. I'm Jack in Brisbane, and I'm here tonight with Mark, also in Brisbane. How you doing, Mark?
I'm doing really well. Enjoying the bit of extra sleep that we're getting at the moment, and hopefully we can catch up a bit before the new season starts off.
Yeah, well, we've got I think it's about 6 or 7 weeks before those games that are in the US,
which are being televised on Optus, apparently.
Yeah, and I think they're at 9 o'clock in the morning or something for us, so they look like they'll be pretty good. So I'm sure we'll be covering that. But yeah, the club has still been tweeting out the content, and they've been putting some good stuff out. They put that goal compilation out, the 40-minute goal compilation of all of the goals this season, all of the league goals.
I may have already watched that once or twice.
Yeah, I was up with one of my daughters at about 3:30 in the morning, and I did what you should never do and check my phone, and I saw that, and then I couldn't sleep, so I had to sit there watching that. So, but that was good. That was good. It was. It's just an example of one of the way the club are connecting at the moment with the fans. I don't remember them ever doing that before. I don't know if there was a reason why they couldn't do that, but it's an example, isn't it, Mark, of kind of the way that they are engaging with supporters at the moment. And obviously it's a lot easier to do that when you're winning, but it's good to see, isn't it?
I think it's just a polar shift in the attitude where I think there's definitely a little bit of they're trying to put right some of the wrongs of the previous regime. I think that's pretty obvious. They're trying to engage with the fans more. They're trying to make a community, which I think they're really succeeding in. And they're trying to include, they've brought back in some of the old players and the heroes of the club. And that's the sort of thing that the club's built on. And everyone has their favorite players and they want to reminisce about years gone by while still looking to the future as well. So, yeah, they've ticked so many boxes in the short time they've been here. Long may it continue.
And of course, it does make it easier to do that when you're winning and when you've got a lot of goodwill. Yeah. So, Ashley, you kind of think, why did Ashley not try some of this stuff? Why did he not try tweeting out the goals and everything? But if he had, it would have just been met with a volley of abuse, probably. So the whole feeling around the place just feels so much better over the last 18 months. And I think that's why they're riding the crest of a wave, and long may this continue, because it's just so good to see, and it's good for us to be able to connect with this and engage with this from 10,000 miles away as well, isn't it?
Well, that's the thing for us. It's perfect because we're so starved of content. I mean, we don't get to have that sort of walk into town and at lunchtime, and you've got the ads for the Ronnie Gill, and so everyone's sort of chomping at the bit for the next bit of gossip and the next bit of news, and everyone's talking about it. We don't quite get that same over here. I mean, that was one of the reasons we decided to get onto a podcast. It was more for when things started out just for us to have that banter again. Which we missed. So for us, this content's just pure gold, and I can't get enough of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the season overall, before we get into talking about the categories we're going to talk about and give some awards for, what's your overall summary of the season? How do you think that this season compares to some of the great seasons of years gone by? Obviously thinking about Keegan and Sir Bobby Robson's teams. What do you think about that, and how does what's your overall takeaways from the season? Now we've had a few days to digest it.
I think it's exceeded everyone's expectations by a country mile. I mean, we said it throughout the season. Whenever there's been a drop, or there's dropped some points here and there, and there's been a little bit of rumblings on social media, there's always been that sort of, well, hang on a bit. Let's just remember, beginning of the season, we were going to be happy with a top half finish and a couple of decent cup run games and stuff like that. We've matched that by getting to a cup final. We've finished in the top 4. I mean, we couldn't have dreamt for more than that at the beginning of the season, and so we're so far ahead of schedule. It's not even funny at the moment. But how does it compare to the previous? Look, under Keegan, it was just this roller coaster of all-out attack. It was balls to the wall football. It was great to watch at the time, and but it was never that comfortable watch because you knew we were going to concede goals. Yeah, we were going to score loads, but you never knew what the score was going to be. You never felt comfortable in the results. Bobby Robson took over, and let's be honest, the club was in some pretty bad state at the time, and we were struggling to get results together. We were fighting a relegation battle when he took over, and then we ended up winning 8-0 or whatever it was, and sort of like let's enjoy this while it happens. But again, I don't think anyone really expected that team to finish in Champions League spaces as well as it did, even though, look, take nothing away from Sir Bobby Robson. He was absolutely one of a kind manager. He was kind of like that everyone's favorite uncle at the club sort of thing. And everyone loved him. Everyone respected him. Players at home and abroad all knew who he was. They all respected him. So from that point of view, I think you expected some sort of upturn. That was special. We obviously had a few down moments in amongst all of that because, we all still remember Bowyer and Dyer getting into a punch up in the middle of the pitch, and Stephen Taylor getting shot with a sniper rifle and getting sent off. And there was all these things that were kind of almost tarnishing that good run of form. And we were playing well, we were playing attacking football, but again, you never knew which way things were going at the back, mainly because of Titus Bramble, it has to be said. Let's be honest. But we had like the passion was there again. I don't think I've ever felt as comfortable with a club with the club and the team defensively as I've felt this season. We just seem to have control in so many games that it was a case of like, well, how many goals can we score in some games? And when we know we're not going to concede a hatful, and we didn't in many games, and so we were always in games. And I think the feeling was we're going to enjoy this while we can, but the belief was still. It was enjoyable because we didn't expect it, but there was always that little nagging doubt at the back of your mind as a Newcastle fan. I was like, the wheels are going to fall off soon. The wheels are going to fall off soon. We can't keep this up for the whole season. And we were just waiting and waiting for everything to go tits up.
Yeah. And I think a lot of it depends on the context is really important, because I know people get annoyed about when you say, look at where we were, blah, blah, blah. And that's fair enough. But like the context of the previous season, I didn't think we were ever going to see Newcastle be competitive again. So for me, that's why this period of time and this season has been and will always be a memorable and a kind of a historic season for us. And it does compare with the Bobby Robson era and the Keegan era. I was a little bit young for the entertainers to fully appreciate that. And I suppose with Bobby, you never really knew when it was going to end. You didn't know it was going to kind of fall off a cliff when he left and Souness came in, So, but with this team, to go from where we were, I'd resign myself to Newcastle never doing anything ever again. So to have all this excitement now, and the way that the season has gone and the future we've got now out of nowhere is just such a magical thing. And the season has been incredible, and we're gonna talk about this over the next two podcasts. We've got this tonight, and then we're gonna do a follow up with a couple of more categories in a couple of days' time. The first thing I want to talk about tonight is goal of the season. Like I said, it was a good job the club tweeted out that it was very timely that they tweeted out that video of all of the goals, because you can have a look at the fixtures and see them, but you can't actually, you can't remember them off the top of your head sometimes, apart from some of the really spectacular ones. The way we're going to do it is we've each got a top three. I'm going to take your third choice first. We're going to talk about that, and then I'll give mine and so on. So what's your third choice for goal of the season?
So so I'm going to actually come up with a special mention first. and that's for Fabian Schär's absolute thunder bastard. His yearly contribution to goal of the season competitions against Nottingham Forest just stepped up. First game of the season, blasted into the top corner. Couldn't wish for anything better than that in the first game of the season. But my number 3 goal is Murphy's thunderbolt against Spurs. That was just an incredible strike. His reaction afterwards, I mean, the game itself was fantastic, and I will definitely be mentioning that again. But yeah, that goal was just something else, especially from the player it was as well.
Yeah, it was his reaction. It was the whole feeling around that game, and I can't even remember that. I think that was the 3rd goal, maybe. I think it was the 3rd goal.
Yeah,
but yeah, like that. it's still a very surreal feeling, that game. And yeah, you're right. We're definitely going to talk about that game again. It was an amazing goal. He usually hits the post, obviously, and I think that's why Lloris left it. He probably thought it was going to come off the post, but he'd already scored once in that game already, so he obviously had his tail up. And that goal was just pressing. It was our press at its best. It was Spurs not doing very well, and we winning the ball back, and he just absolutely rifled it into the corner. Very worthy recipient of your 3rd choice goal there, I think. This one might be a bit of a surprise because I think a lot of people would have this higher up, but there's reasons why I don't have this higher up. But Miggy's volley against Fulham, which did get into the match of the day goal of the season competition, I think, and I think it got into the Premier League goal of the season as well. The technique on this was just out of this world. I've been arguing with people on Twitter this week who say that Miggy's got no technique. He's got bad technique. And to an extent, I can understand that because he does miss chances sometimes, and obviously he doesn't have a right foot. But when you've got a left foot like that, probably unexpected to come from Miggy, to be honest, and to be fair. But this was the kind of start of his hot streak through the autumn. And it was a goal that was kind of repeated, not quite this spectacularly, but the move with it was the whole move across the whole pitch, actually. Swept from one side to the other, and then Miggy got it, passed back to Bruno, who played him in. And the finish was just ridiculous. Outside of the volley, left foot into the corner. There's nothing you can say about it. It was an absolutely
unstoppable shot,
unstoppable goal, amazing technique. Like I said, coming from Miggy, who we didn't think had that in him at that stage. That's my third choice for goal of the season, and you'll probably see when I talk about number 2 and 3, 2 and 1, why I've got that third. Your second choice, then, your runner-up.
My runner-up here is for no other reason than the build-up play for this goal. I've got Murphy's tap-in against Everton. And it was a tough one not to put as my top choice, but I've got reasons, mainly because it's very cloudy for number 1 for me. But yeah, the fact that Alexander Isak had such a run, he basically beat 6 defenders, cut back in because he wanted to beat another one twice, and then literally just dinks it across. What I found really interesting was somebody actually pointed this out on social media as well. He looked up and he was trying to find Callum Wilson with that ball to get Callum Wilson his hat-trick. And the defender just got to it, and then it fell for Murphy just to tap in. The fact that he's made such a jinky run, took the ball on the halfway line, ran down the pitch, beat all of those players, had about probably 30 centimeters to work with to the goal line, and still manages to kind of have the awareness to go, well, Wilson's on his hat-trick, I'm going to try and get him his goal. That was just, to me, the whole thing was just sort of out of this world, and a scary thing to kind of look forward to, I think, for a lot of the defenders in the league.
I don't even think Messi could do that, what he did. It was absolutely ridiculous. And there's a video that was doing the rounds after the game, and it's slow-mo video of the match cam, so the pitch side, and it's got classical music over it. And I remember doing the podcast after the game, and we counted the touches. I think he had 21 touches. Every single touch had to be perfect, otherwise he would have been tackled or he would have kicked it out of play. And he didn't even get the assist.
I know.
About it. to do that and to not get the assist is just
I think every Newcastle fan will give him the assist on that one.
I think so, yeah, I think so. But that was actually my second choice as well, because and it shows you the quality of the goals this season. That is not number one, you know.
Yeah, I think we've just scored some absolutely insane goals this season, and I guess there's one part of me a little bit concerned where we need to score more tap-ins to make sure that we've got this basis of goals and we're not relying on these wonder goals every game to win a contest. But yeah, you can't complain when you're getting that every week.
Yeah, because we only scored 68 goals as well, so we didn't actually score compared to some of the other teams. We didn't score that many. But I remember there was a season, I think it was when Allardyce had half a season, when Charles Nzogby scored a goal for us at Middlesbrough. And it wasn't even that good. It wouldn't even have been in our top 20 goals of this season. And that got goal of the season. We weren't scoring good goals at all, but we're barely scoring any goals. So we've been absolutely spoiled this season. And there's a lot of ones that I've got written down here to mention that didn't even get in the top three. You know, it's just such a high standard of goals. What's your number one then? What's your drum roll? What's your number one goal?
So I have a number one here that is it's basically Miggy for the whole of October. He just went on his own little private goal of the season contest in October and could not stop scoring absolute wonder goals. But I will give a shout out to him for the one that went off his knob, just for Keegan, because I think that was Keegan's moment of the season. That was definitely Keegan's goal of the season. But for me, I actually am putting his goal against Aston Villa up there because I just thought the way he cut in on that one, there was only one thing that he was going to do. Still managed to do it and just put it straight into the top corner, and it was just that was just a sublime bit of skill on the back of what was just an unbelievable run of form for him.
He was hot. He was so hot, and like I said before, we didn't expect this to come from him. He'd been given the Joe Linton treatment, I think, over the summer, and he's come back. He's had a preseason. Even in preseason, he was hot though. He was doing well in preseason as well. So the Villa one, I remember just sinking to my knees when I watched that and in disbelief. You knew what he was going to do, but you couldn't stop it. And that was after he'd scored against Southampton a few days earlier as well.
Yeah.
I've actually got his goal against Everton, which is quite an underrated goal. That was really good. Looping finish over Pickford. The goal against Spurs, where he dribbled past Longley and put it under Lloris. That was fantastic.
Yes.
I had his Villa one written down as well. My number one is Isak's goal against Spurs, his first goal against Spurs. And it's not because of the finish. It's not because of the goal. It's because of the assist, which I still think about every day, that assist. And it's probably going to pop up in other categories at some point, maybe, because it was the status of the game at that time, the disbelief of what was happening. And then to see Joe Willock do that and put it on a plate the way he did for Isak, it was simply amazing. It was incredible. And that was when Isak was coming into his own as well. And he was scoring pretty much every game. So that's what I've gone for as number one. People listening to this might have picked up that we haven't actually mentioned Trippier's free kick against City, which was fantastic. Maxi's goal against Wolves, which got into the Premier League goal of the season competition. And
I still maintain he shinned it.
Well, he did, but it was still the technique for him to put that into the bottom corner. And then there was a couple of others like Isak against Brentford, which was a really good side-footed finish into the top corner. And Wilson's against Everton as well. Wilson's away at Everton was a brilliant goal as well.
I can't remember the game, but which was the game that Isak, the ball was just behind him and he kind of like contorted his body and just sort of back-heeled it, and it's straight into the bottom corner, and it was just like, how on earth he managed to get to that?
That was against Forest. Target. Yeah, that was amazing as well. He extended his go-go gadget legs and shinned it into the bottom corner. Yeah, it was... When you've got high quality players who are full of confidence, this kind of thing can happen, you know. And I suppose it doesn't matter what kind of goals you score, you know, but that matters is to go in. But when you're scoring spectacular goals like this, there was Willock's against Chelsea as well, which is a really good finish.
Yeah,
You know, there's just been so many. It's been such a joy to watch this season.
But I think, like, if you look at the fact that we've had such a good defense as well, like if you think about it, if you can keep a clean sheet, if you can keep a tight defense, and you've got that quality in your squad who are capable of pulling something out of nothing, you're always in with a chance in games.
Oh yeah.
So it's just great to have that at the moment.
That's the way it's gone, and it's been so good to see. What about the most important goal of the season? Not the best technically, or the most spectacular goal. I've got a clear winner for this one, but what do you think? Thinking back, was the most important goal for the team to score this season? Probably Shy, you've already mentioned against Forest, because that was to win that first game. But which others can you think?
I've got some other notes on one of the other categories coming up, but it's not necessarily a goal. It's more just the overall feel of that. I actually think it's either, to be honest, I'm going to go for the opening goal against Brighton, because that was a pressure game. That was a pressure game, and we were struggling to get into that at the time. We needed to win to maintain our top 4 chances. And just to get that sort of, right, look, we can do this under pressure. And I think that's kind of given everyone that little bit of belief, just to kind of, well, hang on, yeah, we are in this, we are where we deserve to be. So yeah, for me, that's probably one of the ones that are up there, just for the pressure that it's kind of taken off almost, and the belief that it's instilled.
It was a lovely little flick by Undav into his own goal. It was nice to see, and it was nice to score from a corner as well.
Yes.
So that was a unique experience.
Yeah.
For me, it was the Wolves game, which was just after the cup final. So we played the cup final, and we lost to Man City, and then we had those games against Wolves and Forest before the international break. And the Wolves game, we were winning quite comfortably, and then they scored due to that calamity at the back where Trippier fell over. And then I think that was a bit of a turning point in the season, because if we hadn't have won that game, that was the stage where we hadn't been scoring many goals. There was a lot of concern around that we were going to drop off, like a lot of teams who were in the top 4 do. A lot of them end up falling away.
Yeah.
And Miggy popped up off the bench, and he scored. It wasn't his best finish by any means. It took a massive deflection. In fact, it was probably going to hit the dugout, I think, the way he kicked it. But it doesn't matter because it went in. And I think that gave us such confidence. There was that game, and there was the Forest game where we won right at the end. And then after that, we had a 2-week international break. So we went into that break. I think we'd gone back into the top 4 as well by that point, because of those 2 wins.
Never looked
back. I don't know if without that goal by Miggy in that game in the last 10 minutes, whether the rest of the season would have gone as it did, because we really had to score more than one goal in a game to dispel the idea that we couldn't score anymore. And we needed the points as well for the European push. So it wasn't his best, but I think it was his most important. It was that goal he scored against Wolves. Right, that's goal of the season done. Let's talk about game of the season. Again, a bit of a difficult category to pick just 3.
Yeah, we've had a few.
There's been a few, absolutely. So you go first again with this one. What's your third choice for game of the season?
I'm going for the Brentford win, the 5-1. Not just for the score itself. I mean, we played well, great results, stacked the goals on. We've had a lot of games where we've actually scored lots and lots of goals, and it's not something that we're used to with Newcastle. It was always like, under Allardyce, even under Rafa, it was like, we score 1 or 2 maybe, try to keep things tight, and that was kind of all we had to look forward to. We're putting teams to the sword now, and it's like, if we get in front early and then they let their heads drop, then we're in for a good afternoon. So, but obviously the icing on the cake for the Brentford game was a little bet by our friend of the pod, Craig, which was if they score 5 goals, that he was going to dye his hair like Bruno and Joe. And the look on Craig's face when we watched the replay, because they were doing the watch along for this as well, the look on Craig's face was worth that. Just to see that 5th goal go in and watch Dex and Lee just in
It was
hysterics.
me, actually. It was me.
Was it
yeah,
you?
I
It
was
was
on it.
you.
Yeah.
And
It was
then
hilarious.
everyone's celebrating, other than Craig, who's just going like, "Oh no." Yeah, that was priceless.
And then he tried to get out of it by saying it didn't count. It didn't count because it was an own goal. We quickly disabused him of that notion. He had to do it, and he did do it. To be fair, I mean, he actually kept it for longer than I thought he would. He kept it for a good few weeks. So that game was because we'd just beaten Fulham, and that was quite near the start of the season. And I remember thinking at the time, if we can win these 2 games, then that will give the season lift off.
Yeah.
And we did. We won 4-1 and then 5-1. Bruno in that Brentford game was out of this world. It was his best performance for us. He scored 2 goals. He absolutely bossed it. And Brentford are a good team. They did the double over Man City this season. So to do what we did to them that day was really, really good. My third choice for game of the season, I've gone with the Brighton game. It probably could have been a bit higher up, but the importance of it, I think we knew when we won this that we were going to qualify for the Champions League, because at that stage we only needed to get 3 more points, and we had Leicester and Chelsea coming up. Obviously, it didn't work out that way in the end because we didn't need 3 points, because Villa did us a favour.
Yeah.
But the Brighton game, the intensity of the press was just amazing to see. We had Isak and Wilson. We just attacked relentlessly. We didn't let them settle on the ball. They were flustered, kicking it out of play. We've already talked about the first goal, the own goal, and then Big Dan Burn nodded in. They came back into it, Brighton. They did come back into it a bit, but they still didn't create many chances. They scored a goal. And then those last 5 minutes, listening back to the commentary, the Matthew Raisbeck commentary of the Wilson and the Bruno goals, I think St. James's Park that night, I think they knew, it's only a few weeks ago, but it'll live long in the memory as a really famous special night under the lights. And War Flags were at the best as well. Yeah. So that's one that will really be a memorable game. That's my third choice. What's your second choice?
This is probably not so much on the result or the overall performance or the number of goals that we scored, although the goals scored did come into it. But I'm actually going to go for the Man City at home, the 3-3 draw. I think in terms of the importance for the belief of the players, just to kind of go up 3-1 against Man City. And look, they pulled 2 goals back, which is expected because they're a top side. They've gone on to win the league. But just for us to be able to go at them, the champions elect, the champions from the previous season, and give a good account of ourselves, I think that kind of instilled that belief in the players that, you know what, we can match it with anyone on our day. And I think they've carried that through the rest of the season, where they never looked frightened of anyone that they came up against, no matter who it was. And I think a lot of that probably stems from obviously Eddie Howe and the way he gets them ready, but just the fact that they've had Man City at home, they've kept them to a 3-3 draw, and they've scored goals against them. They were leading at one point, and they've given a really good account of themselves. It's like, well, hang on, we belong up the top with these clubs because we're able to match them.
It was such a high quality game. It was so good. And like you said, we matched the champions. Maxi was absolutely amazing that day. And I think
probably one of his best games of the season. Yeah.
It was probably one of his best games for the club, full stop. And it was probably, I think, might have been the best individual performance by any player of ours this season. And we just thought that was going to be the time when he was going to kick on. And he got injured a few games later, unfortunately. Yeah. But the Man City game was such a high quality, so exciting, and I think we probably started getting a feeling at that stage that we're a good team. We're a good team, and that we are going to be able to compete, and that we might be able to do a bit more than just sort of try and finish in the top half this season. It was such an exciting game. My second choice, I've gone for Spurs away. That was the game, we called it a statement win, I think, at the time. I think we didn't know how bad Spurs were then. actually, they hadn't. I think they'd won all of the home games for the season up to that point, and I think there was something like 10 wins in a row they'd done across 2 seasons when we turned up. And it wasn't just the fact we beat them; it was the manner we did it. They were pretty good for the first 10, 15 minutes, but then after that, we bossed it completely. And it was a pouring down day in London. But it was the time when it was in the middle of a good run for us, and I think it might have put us into the top 4 even that win. And we were sending a message to the rest of the league and to one of the clubs that had opposed the takeover and tried to, probably the club that's most worried about us overtaking them and leapfrogging them, worried with good cause, obviously. But to beat them the way we did was really good. And even when they scored, they didn't look like getting back into it.
Yeah.
It didn't look like scoring again, and we were comfortable.
We looked comfortable, yeah.
We looked comfortable, and we played so well. And the goal from Wilson was good, but then Miggy's beautiful slalom run and finish under Lloris was really good as well. So that was one where you feel so positive afterwards because you think that we could do something here. We're not here just to mess around. We're a serious team, and we've just proven it by going to beat one of the big 6 as it used to be. Away from home.
The 6 formerly known as.
Right, so that was the Spurs away game. What's your answer for your best
Spurs
game
at
of the
home?
season?
Spurs at home. There's no other answer. Let's be honest. 5 goals up inside 22 minutes. It's just absolute dreamland stuff. It was surreal while you were watching it, and could have easily been more. And we probably took our foot off the accelerator a little bit. Like after that 5th goal went in, we could have scored another couple in that first half, and then the second half was just cruise control, just game management. Try to reserve some energy for the next game, because that was put to bed very, very early on. But just everything that they did just came off. It was like they literally could not do anything wrong in that first 20 minutes. And, as you said, we've had goals of the season contenders. We've had assists of the season contenders, all from that game in the first 20 odd minutes. So it's just I don't think anyone's scored that many goals in the Premier League in that short amount of time, have they?
I think Man City did it once against Watford, but that doesn't really count.
Yeah. So that was just amazing.
Spurs could have gone level with us on points if they'd have won this game as well. So unlike the away game, we did know that they were shit by this point, so we knew that. And then the team sheet was weird because they had wing backs at full back, and they tried to change the formation, and it didn't look good for them. And it was that period where they had that caretaker manager as well. So,
well, we were all worried about this game beforehand as well. And then you were on the podcast with Seb, and it was like he was going, "No, we're going to get hammered here. You guys are going to like 3 or 4 goals easy," and we're like, not convinced about this, mate. Not convinced. And then literally after the game, it's just like, wow.
It was a mind-blowing 21 minutes in that game, and just to so routinely beat a team who were competitors or who were on paper competing with us at that time, and the performance by Willock and Isak, and you couldn't even remember who'd scored which goal. Like at half time, I completely forgotten about Joe Linton's goal, which was absolutely phenomenal in itself, because it was the long pass by Shah and then Joe Linton's touch. It was just the whole experience was just crazy.
But there was the reaction from Isak for his second as well. And he's just like, nah, I don't know what's going on here. This is just mad.
And you kind of, because the games are coming thick and fast, and you kind of move on with the season. But this is one where we reflect on podcasts like this. And it's nice for us to have the podcast that we recorded after that to always think about it. If you ever feel a bit sad, just put that on, and that'll perk us right up. But I don't think you'll get many disputes or many arguments from people about that. I think that was definitely the game of the season. But again, there was games like the Man United game. That was a really good game. There was the quarterfinal against Leicester where Dan Burns scored. That was good in the cup. And then there was the Arsenal away game as well, which was really good in a different way, because we just went and upset Arteta quite a lot, to put it mildly.
Of the century there.
Yeah, and we managed to get a 0-0 there, which ruffled a few feathers. And I think the legacy of that is going to continue for a long time, because everyone seems to think we're this dark art team now, basically based on that game. But that was good to go to. Arsenal had won every game that season, and to go there and get the point. So there was good games for different reasons, but yeah, the Spurs game, you're never going to top that, I don't think. Right, let's bring it down a little bit. We've talked positive, and we want to obviously keep that, but there has been a few kind of disappointments that it's worth touching on, or a few sort of very minor negative points to the season. It's football, so it's going to happen. But what do you want to say about this one? What's your sort of third disappointment or slight upset about this season?
So this is probably more a hindsight disappointment than something that was really troubling at the time. I mean, obviously, you never want to see a player get injured, but given how well he has played since he's came back from his injury, and you kind of look back on, what could have been had he had a full season. The injury to Alexander Isak was just it's robbed us of what could have been an absolutely mind-blowing season from him. And, who knows, if he'd managed to play the whole season, we could have ended up finishing even higher in the league.
Yeah, and the frustrating thing about that was it was on international duty as well. So he'd come in and he'd played a few games, probably from the beginning, which probably Eddie didn't want to do because he likes to introduce people slowly. But Wilson was injured, and I think Chris Wood was out a bit as well. So he came in and he scored a couple of goals. He was really good against Liverpool. He scored the equaliser in the game against Bournemouth at home. And then he's missed I think it was 11 games he missed. So he's missed almost a third of the season with that thigh injury. And even after the World Cup, there was still a few games before he came back. So, but when you look at what he did after that, it's absolutely such a shame. But he's only 23, and he stayed fit after that. So hopefully that's going to be something that, it is going to be something that we'll watch him for years to come, because he's an amazing footballer. The thing that I had here was, I've spoken about this a bit, so I'm not going to labor it too much, but just the kind of meltdown from the supporters and from the fan base. It's mainly a social media thing, I know that, but there was even a few boos in the Bournemouth game when we didn't win at home. And when I think that was start of the season, I think that was 6 games without a win at that stage. But I just want everyone to be patient. I want everyone to understand where we're at as a club. Next season, there's going to be challenges. We're not going to win. We might not win as many games as this season. And there will be games where we lose. There'll be games where players don't play well, and there'll be tactical problems because it's football and because it happens. I just hope that there's a balance and a sort of reasonableness to the reaction. Because I was listening to the True Faith live podcast they did, and they had Peter Silverstone, who's one of the business guys at the club now. And he said, and I think George Colkin as well said, that no matter what happens next season, the club is going to be in a better position overall this time next summer than they are going to be in this summer. So even if we don't qualify for the Champions League, we're going to have had the experience, we're going to have the money, and we're going to have a stronger squad. So things are on the right track, on the right trajectory, and they're only going to go one way. So I know that's football and it's emotional, and especially on social media, but I just hope that the reaction is proportionate at times, and that we can keep an eye on, an eye on the big picture, and see that the club is really on the right track and on the right direction.
I think social media is always take it with a pinch of salt. It's very reactionary. It's always over the top. There's never any kind of gray area in the middle. It's always either really, really good or really, really shit. And it's it's not just with football. It's with anything you see on social media. It's very much like polar extreme opinions that always get aired, and it's the middle ground always tends to kind of get lost in the distance from the vocal minority, I guess you would say. So it is worth taking with a pinch of salt. I guess there's a difference for me. Expectation is something that we're going to have to get to grips with as a fan base, and I understand that we kind of have this expectation now that, well, we've actually got good players and we're actually a good team and we're playing really good football, so why can't we win more games? My feeling is there's a difference between being disappointed and being abusively obnoxious about a bad result. And especially at this stage of our development, my mindset's fully on this is like, treat it as a 5-year project, and we're going to have ups and downs. It's not going to be this constantly upward trajectory, even though it has been pretty much so far. But we are going to have problems. We are going to have hurdles that we will overcome. Man City have done it. Other clubs that have been successful have done it. And it's a case of, well, look, yes, okay, be disappointed at a loss. Be disappointed that, we've sold a player if we sell a player. Be like, happy that we win, but look at the bigger picture, I think, and celebrate and be miserable as much as you want, but with the understanding that it's a long-term project and it's not going to be an overnight thing, and we're not going to suddenly be this team that wins every single game with a record number of points overnight. It's going to take time to build that up. And we may struggle next season. We've got extra games. We're going to have new players hopefully coming in to have to settle in, and there's no guarantee that they're all going to work out. There's no guarantee that they're all going to be good players for us. So I agree with you. It's like temper that expectation a little bit and just treat things with the respect and the long-term view, I think, that they probably need to be.
Yeah, and the good news is we've got the perfect manager for that. And we've talked a lot of times about how Eddie Howe is just so balanced. He's so rational. He's so logical, and he's so measured all the time. And I think that's why he's the perfect manager for this club at this time. He understands it, and he just gets what he has to do to keep things calm. Unlike other managers who at times things have just gone way up high or have just gone so far down low. And it's been a very bipolar football club, which sometimes hasn't been helped by some of the employees. But Eddie's perfect for this, I think. What about your second disappointment of the season?
So I've gone for this purely and simply because of how contrasting it is to the rest of what we've actually built up this season. And I've gone for Ryan Fraser just as a whole. I've been bitterly disappointed that in a team that seems to have this whole team first mentality, everyone's pushing in the right direction, they're all on board, no one seems to have egos getting in the way at the moment, which has just been a breath of fresh air for a club that was being successful. And there are players who are missing out on a start because someone else is in form, and they at other clubs they may have thrown the toys out the pram, but most of the players have just been like, yep, I'm getting on with it, and if I get my chance, I'm going to do what I can to keep this going. And Ryan Fraser, and I don't know what it was, and Eddie Howe is definitely the manager that isn't going to air his dirty laundry in public. And the statement that he did make was very, very surprising for what he normally would come out with. So something bad's gone on when Eddie Howe's come out and said what he did say. But yeah, for me, Ryan Fraser was a part of that squad. And he was playing really well last season, the season before this one. And he was probably an integral part of that side at the time. And we know we have all these jokes about him and Dan Burn walking out next to each other, and it was like Dan Burn had his little mascot out for the day. And it was good fun, it was jokes, and then all of a sudden he's not in the squad, and then he's banished to train with the reserves, and something's gone on there. And I think that's probably really disappointing for me that someone hasn't bought into that whole team philosophy that we've had this season. That's really been the backbone of our success.
Yeah, and he's got a history with Eddie Howe as well, because he played really well for him at Bournemouth for a long time. But then he also had a fallout there where he didn't want to play at the end of the COVID season because he didn't want to. It was the end of his contract, and he didn't want to jeopardize a move. There's something, we don't know Ryan Fraser, but there must be something about him that a character trait of his that makes him do this or makes him kind of fall out of favor. He's got 1 year left on his contract. I think he might have 2 years. I was looking at this earlier, but he'll be on a decent wage because he was a free transfer. Yeah. But even if he doesn't get a move, he's not going to be part of the squad. I
think what contrasts it even more though is when you look at Lascelles as the club captain, and you look at Richie, who's hardly had a kick all season. And they're still classed as this part of the inner circle in terms of the leadership group, and they're still contributing, even not on the pitch, but they're still leaders in the dressing room, and they're still part of the club's success. So I guess that to me was probably, well, what's gone on? I don't know why he's decided to not be a part of that. It just it didn't sit well with me.
Yeah, and like you said, Eddie's reaction was very uncharacteristic and unlike him, where he basically said, somebody doesn't want to be here, then they're not going to play. Simple as. And he's banished him to the under 21s. So yeah, that was a disappointment, definitely, in terms of an individual player. My second thing was a lack of goals from corners and attacking set pieces. Considering we've got a team of giants, we scored a few of them, but not many. And I think because I'm an XG wanker, I think there was an underperformance of 10 on the XG. So we should have scored 10 more goals than we did from corners and set pieces, especially when you've got Kieran Trippier, who most of the time is putting in good quality crosses. Obviously, Dan Burn did get his header, not from a corner, but from a free kick against Brighton. But he's massive. He should be scoring more headers, or he should be at least getting more opportunities. And Botman didn't score a goal either. He nearly did against Fulham. He hit the post, but yeah, it's something for us to work on. But the good news is that's the kind of thing you can work on in training. We had a few little clever routines where with Miggy and Trippier, Wilson scored a header against Man United, I think it was, or it was Villa. It was Villa where they did a little 1-2 thing from the corner, and he flicked it in, and Wilson scored a header. So there is some clever things you can do.
But do you not feel we're trying to overcomplicate it though at times?
Sometimes, yeah. But I mean, most games we're getting 15 plus corners. Yeah. There's some games where we're getting back-to-back corners for about 10 minutes. And we're still not managing to score from them. So at least that's an area we can look at for next season, and that's something that we should be able to improve with work on the training pitch. We'll probably just need to get a set piece coach, because I think Jason Tyndall's doing it.
Yeah.
So he's good at doing other stuff. So let him go and do the things he's good at and get a proper set piece coach in. Right, your biggest disappointment of the season is probably not going to be any surprise to anyone.
No, the cup final.
Yeah.
I think everyone's disappointment on that one. I think it was built up so much. I mean, obviously, I was in Vegas for the cup final. I went along to the meetup with all of the Newcastle fans. There was a little bit weird at the pub because there was the Rangers Celtic game on. There was the Man United. They had the rugby on. The Man United Newcastle final. And so there was just this sea of mixed fans, and there wasn't that that segregation, I think, where it encourages a bit more banter because it's like, safety in numbers, and everyone gets Billy Big Spuds at that moment. And it's like what we do when we have the meetups here in Australia, where we wanted to kind of everyone's singing away because everyone's in the little pocket together. So there wasn't that kind of element. But having said that, it was just we didn't really turn up for it. We didn't play badly. We got done by a couple of soft goals, I thought, but the hype and the build up, and I think it was like the run up to that game where Man United just went on this monumental run of form, and we just hit a brick wall all of a sudden. And whether or not that was down to the pressure that was on the players and the pressure that was on the club to break our duck for first silverware in God knows how many years, or 60 years now or something, and you're thinking like, did that get to the players? Were they then concentrating on that too much? Were they too worried about actually doing the job at hand because of all the extra pressure that was being built up on her? And it was just, you talk to people, and it was a madhouse in Newcastle. It was all anyone was talking about for like 2 weeks leading up to the final. And for us to just kind of like fizzle out, not score a goal, and it just like you think, well, could have given a better account of ourselves. And then especially when you go and beat Man United 2-0 at St James's Park, and you just think, what could have been?
Yeah, I think that you've made a good point there about the hype around it, because it's understandable because it's been so long since we're in a cup final. But I do think it affected the players. It definitely affected the league form beforehand, and Eddie has admitted that. He said that it's human nature to be distracted by it. That there was the letters that the Athletic had with the players' families and things, and it's all great, but it did feed into. There was the whole frenzy around tickets. Everyone was desperate for a ticket. So I don't know whether because we're a club in this situation and we're going to get used to being in finals, maybe we just needed to get this out of our system, because it was the first cup final was always going to be such a huge event, and because it happened so soon, maybe, and because the way that the fixtures happened in the cup run was just after the World Cup as well, so that they were kind of squeezed into a shorter period of time, so it felt like we were almost exclusively playing cup fixtures for a few weeks before the final. like you said, the time of season was just off because we'd lost a bit of form, and maybe because of this hype and everything that was going on, and Man United were in good form. So I think that played into it as well. And like you
I
said,
think in terms of the league, though, we were desperate probably for some changes, and we didn't. And I'm not sure whether that was Eddie Howe just like, well, this is the team that we're going to play the cup final with, so we just want everyone to kind of keep going and not lose form or not sort of risk anything. And you know, that comes down to squad depth and faith that we've got some depth pieces. So, but yeah, that there was just that lethargy, I think, in the team, and that there wasn't that same press. There wasn't the same urgency in them. They looked leggy. They looked tired. And I think a lot of it was probably just mental.
Yeah, and obviously Nick Pope had his disaster the week before as well,
and Bruno was suspended as well.
Bruno was suspended before the cup final, so he missed the 3 games preceding, which didn't help because we didn't win any of those games. So everything kind of came together to that situation. But I do think we'll be better for the experience because we've been through it now, and we'll know that next time, like, we might just be a bit more calm, like as a group of players and coaching staff, and as a fan base as well, because we know that we're going to be back. And it wasn't the kind of devastation after this cup final because we are a good team and we will be back. So there was positives to take from it as well. The scenes at the end were good with the flags, and you know that we were still supporting the fans. Of course, we're still supporting. But I think like the whole thing about everyone, you know, London was black and white, and that's great. But it's also like, like it feeds into this hype, which maybe got a little bit, I don't know if it got out of hand, but I don't think it helped the players, and it didn't help the performance on that day.
Yeah, a lot of extra pressure on their shoulders. I mean, hopefully the fact that we saw off the challenge from Liverpool to maintain the top 4 gives them a little bit more belief going forward that, well, you know what, we can actually still get over the line. Because I think even Dan Burns said like they were starting to feel a bit nervy in that Brighton game, and the pressure was telling because we needed to win it. And so, and it's human, as you said, it's human nature. And I think it's one of those things where, as a club, we need to have that belief and we need to get used to it more than anything. So it's not as, and it sounds weird, so it's not as big a deal. And I don't want to get to the point where we're like Man United fans who were like, didn't even hang around for the trophy ceremony. But it needs to be that little bit more normality about it so that we don't have this massive freak out because we've got this cup final now.
Yeah, and I think it will be next time as well. So I think, and we beat Man United a few weeks later as well in the league, which was a really important game at that time. So it wasn't that Man United were a particularly better team than us. They've got better players overall, and they did finish
a bigger team. That was all.
But it was. But it was a disappointment, that. But it's the kind of disappointment that you can learn from, and it wasn't like an earth-shattering devastation. It was more like disappointment. Let's learn from it and let's go again and let's beat them next time. Let's win the next cup final we're in. So that's probably going to be most people's biggest disappointment. But we did well to get there in the first place as well, and we had some good moments on the run. Sean Longstaff's goals, and in the semi-final, and Big Dan Burn in the quarter-final as well.
Gun to get me suit measures. His interview afterwards was just priceless.
And his dance, of course, as well.
Yes, and his dance. Yeah.
Right. Last category we're going to talk about tonight is the most improved player of the season. Again, there's quite a few options for this. I had 5 or 6 that it could have been.
Yeah.
You go first. Who's your third choice for the most improved player of the season?
I guess let's be honest here. It could be anybody who was playing under Bruce. I think the entire team has improved under Eddie Howe from what we were playing as, if for no other reason than just that they're fit and can actually string a couple of passes together and play for a full 90 minutes. The passing's better. Players know their roles. They know where they're meant to be. So I guess like 2 players that I would like to kind of just have a special mention for here is Shah, who by most people's understanding would have been out the door had Steve Bruce sort of stuck around, and has now formed the best defensive partnership in the league. Bit of a turnaround there. And I want to have a little bit of a shout out. Not that I think he has improved other areas of his game, because I think he's always been a contributor, but Miggy's added goals. And I think he's kind of added that finishing product to his game, but he's always ran, he's always worked his ass off, he's always provided that legs in midfield and on the wing for us, so that pressure. So it's not so much that he's improved that area of his game, but he has added goals. My third choice here is somewhat controversial that it's not higher, and I understand that, but he did pick up a bit the first season that Eddie Howe was there, and this is Joe Linton. He's obviously gone on leaps and bounds. He's absolutely phenomenal. He's been a rock in that team all season, steamroller over most of the teams that he's played against, and justifiably has now managed to get his Brazil call up, which I'm so pleased for him, because it's nothing more than he deserves. But it was more when he swapped into midfield that was where he started the upward trend. So that was kind of last season, and he's continued that upward trend. So fair play, but I'm going to leave him in at number 3, because I think 2 other players for me probably shade him in terms of their overall improvement.
To be fair as well, with Joe Linton, I've kind of not considered him for this because he improved so much last season. So he did improve again a lot, and he's now become one of the best midfielders in the league, and he's added goals as well. So he could be in with a chance of this, or even player of the season. He was unlucky not to be in it with a shout of Premier League player of the season. Probably he's been absolutely amazing in different positions, and he must be an absolute dream to manage. But I'm sure he'll be talked about in future categories. So I left him out of this one. My third choice was Miggy, for the reasons you've outlined. Again, I think he got the Joe Linton treatment this season, so he could have been higher, but the kind of freak goal scoring run he went on, I think it was a freak run. I think that'll never happen to him in his career again. But he's still improved his overall game. He does have technical weaknesses that he's never going to probably improve, such as not having a right foot, and his finishing misses at times. But when you've gone and scored 11 league goals from, I think he'd only scored 6 in his previous 4 years. So to do that and to become such an important part. And the most pleasing thing for Miggy, sort of, and it's fresh in the memory, was the Brighton game as well, where he didn't score, he missed a chance, and then they went and scored straight away. But his overall performance was so good. He pressed, he hassled all game. It was a perfect game for him because he could just run all day. And then he got the assist for Wilson's massively important goal as well at the end. So even though he didn't score, he was man of the match in that game.
And I genuinely don't know where he gets all his energy from.
It's amazing.
If he can send me a little small vial, I'd like that, yeah.
Like we said before, he could have had his own goal of the season competition on his own, and nobody would have thought that would happen with Miggy at the start of the season. So the signs were there in pre-season, and he carried it on. So he's my third most improved player of the season. Number 2 for you?
I've gone for Longstaff, and I think again this is a player, and I was touch and go, and I haven't included Joe Willock in this top 3, and it's a shame for him again. But it was that thing where, like, he when he first came here on loan, he was just like outstanding. So we're kind of just back to that level, and it's almost that way with Longstaff. And I maybe could have substituted either or in this argument for the second spot. Longstaff is back to Rafa Longstaff for me, maybe even a bit better.
I think
he's for us to go into games where he was injured thinking, holy crap, how are we going to manage without him? He's such a miss in that midfield. And I mean, like a year ago, there was literally no way anyone was going to be thinking that. It's just the monumental shift in the attitude of what he contributes to that side. Yeah, he runs around a lot. Oh, yeah, he just sort of plods around and he doesn't really contribute much. But he's so instrumental for how that team works. And he knows his job now. He knows what's expected of him. He's well coached. No, he's not a world-class player. No, he's not a superstar. But teams need players like him. And I think he's just like relished the opportunity to get back into that role and back into that form for this club. And I've been so pleased for him as a local lad as well. You can see the pride that he has, now in playing for that club. And when you hear his interviews about, I just didn't really want to play football anymore under Bruce, and I didn't want to go into training. And for him to go from that to this player we see now, it just makes you swell with pride about, like, the local lad come good at the club.
It does, and I'm going to talk about him now because he's my number one pick. I think he's been the most improved player. I did think he had it in him. I don't know if I thought he had it to this extent in him. But the best thing about Longstaff is, like I said, he's local. The Villa game where he didn't play, he was such a miss. And I think we knew he was going to be a miss. And the players like this are really important for the squad. And he's not a sexy name. He's not a foreign trickster. He's not got great skill necessarily. But every successful team needs players like this in. They need players who are going to do the dirty work. He runs all day. He's always got the best. He always runs the furthest. He can put a tackle in. He gets in good positions. If he only got 3 goals this season, if he could finish, he'd be even better. So I think he has been the most improved player, just to the extent that he's made himself invaluable. He's made himself almost as invaluable as Bruno in the midfield.
But I think he does the dirty work that no one else does to allow the likes of Bruno, to allow the likes of Willock to play their game more naturally and have that better understanding of they can bomb forward when they need to. They can kind of go out wide when they need to, because they know Longstaff's going to be there doing the mucky work in midfield, running around. No one notices him until he's not there.
Yeah, that's the. I think about the Man United teams, that one of the teams that Fergie made, and it had Park Ji-sung in it, and that's the job he did. And there was a game in the Champions League, I think it was, where I think it might have been against Barcelona, where his instructions were just to sit on Busquets or whoever it was, and he did it perfectly, and Man United won the game. I don't know if it was Barcelona, but it was someone anyway. And he's not going to get the plaudits necessarily, although he has started getting them this season now because he's been so good. But teams need players like this, and like you said, he lets other people play with the work he does. And the most impressive thing about him as well is he's been singled out for scapegoating criticism by a lot of fans for a few years because he can't finish very well, and because sometimes he misplaces passes. So he has had the scapegoat treatment. He looked like he was on his way out. He was going to go to Everton at one point. He was fed up. Like, if you listen to interviews with him, he wasn't coached before when Steve Bruce was there. So as soon as Eddie came in, again, it's another quality of Eddie Howe to recognize somebody's attributes and then coach them to be the best version of themselves. And him, along with Dan Burn and others, is such an important part of the squad as well. And he retains that local link, and there's nothing better than seeing a homegrown player do so well. And he's coming into his prime now. He's mid-20s, so he's going to be a really useful squad player moving forward. And I'm just pleased that he's getting the credit that he deserves.
I mean, it's not something that you want to say, but it's kind of, his injuries probably done him a load of good in terms of his reputation, because if he hadn't got injured, he'd have played the rest of the season out and everyone's like going, yeah, he's still a bit crap. Oh, he's still a weak link in that midfield. But now that you've seen what we are without him in there, and you appreciate so much more that we are actually needing this player just to do the dirty work, and he's doing it so well. I think his reputation's actually gone through the roof because of him having an injury. It's probably the only player, I think, in history that's actually got a better reputation because of having an injury and sitting out some games.
Well, it's his character as well to play that game against Leicester when he was needed, when he obviously wasn't fit. He got injured in the Everton game by a heavy tackle, which should have been a penalty, which should have been given. Penalty. And then he played the Leicester game because we were desperate, and he wasn't fit, obviously, because he didn't play in the next game. He wasn't even on the bench against Chelsea. So he came back, he played through the pain barrier like a few players have done this season, and he fought for the cause, and he's been really good. And I'm looking forward to seeing him play in the Champions League, which is just a phrase you'd never ever thought you'd say about him. Right, so he's my number one. Who's your number one most improved player of the season?
Jacob Murphy.
Yeah, he was my number two. So you talk about him.
he's gone from someone who you just wanted rid of. He was like this passenger player who wasn't achieving anything, and even when he did have a moderately good game, he was playing his own crossbar challenge every time he got on the pitch. He would hit the post every game, even if you had a shot. He was not achieving anything on the pitch. To go from that to into the player he is now, where when Miggy was injured and he came back and he was fit, you've got to the point where no, Murphy's in the side. He's held down his place. He's doing just as well, if not better, than what Miggy was beforehand. Like, Miggy's on the bench and he's got to earn his place back. And you know, Murphy's done some of the dirty work as well this season, where he's played on the left, he's played on the right, he's come off the bench to just kind of like shore up a game. So he's done what's needed for the team. For the fans, obviously, his shithousery is next to no equal in the Premier League. When he's coming off after being accused of time wasting and he's pointing at his imaginary watch, and you know, things like that. It's like the fans love it. He's
a walking
Newcastle
meme.
fan. He is a walking meme, and it's one of those things where the fans will take to him because he wears his heart on his sleeve, and he might not be a locally born lad, but he's a Geordie by heart. He supported the club all his life. I mean, there was talk when we bought him that we bought the wrong Murphy, and you know, he's done really well to get to where he is now, where I think I'd be reluctant to get rid of him. And you know, to say that now, after what we had from him under Bruce, for example, where you know, he was there just to kind of make up the numbers. You know, you're doing pretty well to not have a player like that just be well, you know what, he's done really well, maybe we can get some money for him, to just go, look, we've got to keep him. You've got to keep him around the squad. He's like our own little personal cheerleader in the changing rooms. And you know, he's giving everything he can on the pitch, but he's also adding quality to what he's done as well. So yeah, for me, I mean, even beyond that Spurs goal, he's just added more to his game this season. And okay, look, he's still maybe not the best player in the squad technically, but the change in what he's actually providing us is chalk and cheese.
His brother plays for Oxford United now, by the way. I found that out earlier on when I was researching for an article, but yeah, he has been so improved, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I thought he was going to be this good, but I did think he had something in him. I think since he signed, I think he's had attributes. You know, he's quick, and he can put a cross in. He got a really nice assist for Jose Perez about 5 years ago when we beat Stoke in a game when Rafa was there. So, but then he's had a couple of underwhelming loan spells as well, and he did just look like he'd be out, be off to the Championship. But he's played 36 league games this season. He started at double figures, and he did this last season as well when Maxi was injured and when Miggy was unavailable. And he was keeping Miggy out of the team last season for a bit. So Eddie trusts him, and he's turned him into a Champions League player, which is just
mental,
just crazy. Yeah. Of all the things Eddie's done to be able to turn Jacob Murphy into a Champions League player, that's got to be one of his biggest achievements. All right, this has been a lot of fun. I've very much enjoyed this.
I've enjoyed this.
So we will be back in a couple of days, probably I think on Monday or Sunday, and we're going to be looking at player of the season, moment of the season, surprise of the season, and signing of the season. So that's another 4 categories. We're going to keep this season going on for as long as we can before we succumb to the transfer madness and check Fabrizio Romano's tweets every 3 minutes. All right. Thanks very much, Mark. It's been a pleasure. I'll speak to you soon.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Cheers. See ya.
Catch you later.